But this is an Inuyasha video. Inuyasha versus his brother Seshomaru. Now I have 3 scenarios for this. I could have did 2, but I'm gonna do 3. Now we understand that Inuyasha cut off his arm at the beginning of Inuyasha, and that was an L for Sesshomaru because then Inuyasha started to wield Tensaiga. Now they fought a little bit in between the series, right? Like in the middle of like finding Naraku and other things, their paths converged and they fought each other, you know, but not like seriously and shit. This is like they're seriously fighting each other, not just testing each other's fucking powers and shit. So the scenario 1 is like season, like in the middle of the series, like at the point where Naraku was like debating on absorbing both of them, like that point in the series. If you remember when Naraku was trying to absorb Sesshomaru and Inuyasha so he could become more powerful as a demon, because Naraku is an amalgamation of all those demons, right? So we'll use like middle of the series, right? And then scenario 2 is the end of the series, when they actually teamed up to fight against Naraku. But we'll say like after they fought against him or whatever, they fight each other, right? And then scenario 3, this is actually Yashahime I'm using, that time period, season 2 Yashahime, because Inuyasha wasn't in season 1, but he was in season 2. Now, so the first scenario, women of strength, y'all, that's Sesshomaru. It's known as, these people were not just like, they knew Sesshomaru. All the demons knew Sesshomaru and shit. Like, everybody did. Koga even ran into him and shit, and he was like, yo, you killed this girl again? Like, I'll fucking kill you and shit. You will, I'll wipe out your clan and shit. And, like, Koga actually took him seriously. He's like, this is not a, he's not like his brother and shit. I know this guy's actually a fucking player and shit. Like, he could kill me, if I, play games wrong. But, like, he's also like, if you come after my people, then I can attack you and shit, too. They had an understanding, but like everybody, and then Roro-Khan was like, yo, if we have to go to fight the Cat Clan and shit again, or the Panthers and shit, I'm with you. And he's like, all right, yeah, that's good. Still loyal to me, and you understand my power and shit. So now strength, it's just known throughout the fucking world that he's the most powerful demon, like currently alive. Even with Inuyasha around and shit like that, and Raku. The demons who've like known him shit for a while know him. And then speed goes to Sesshomaru. Inuyasha's pretty quick, but he's like always getting like he carries around Tensaiga, right? And like Sesshomaru's not carrying around weight too, but like he moves faster, man. I see that shit. Like he definitely moves faster than Inuyasha. Even in the middle of the series, durability goes to Sesshomaru. He's tanking attacks from fucking guys who like don, priest robes and shit, and they run around and they try to hit him with suture charms and shit, and he's like, breaking out of that shit, with his demon energy. Now Inuyasha, he handling that shit? I don't think so. Not the same way. His durability is not as good as. He could have tanked an attack from Goshinki, but Inuyasha, he got fucked up. Endurance goes to Sesshomaru as well. He's always on the hunt. He's always on the move. Inuyasha sitting down talking to Kagome and other things, that don't, make your endurance go up. It kind of, he's fighting and shit too. He's just been more of a fighter for longer and everything else. Intelligence, Sesshomaru again. Inuyasha, he's, a little bit smart. He ain't dumb. He ain't the dumbest character, but he ain't the smartest out there. And the experience definitely goes to Sesshomaru. He's been around for thousands of years, even at this point in time, and even going further, on the series, he'll never have less experience than his brother. Close skills go to Inuyasha, though. So, like, Inuyasha don't have any real range attacks. Like, his range attacks at this point are, like, not refined or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, he can use Backlash Wave and, Wind Scar and then Blades of Blood and shit like that. But like those moves, and then Sesshomaru could do shit like that too with the swords he has. He has Tokujin and he has the Tenseiga, which ain't a good sword to use in battle, but the Tokujin can do shit like that, and it's more powerful than those moves too. And then if Inuyasha loses his sword and he goes berserk, right? He then uses his hands a lot more than Sesshomaru does. Now Sesshomaru has that light whip that he can bring out and start whipping, Inuyasha. He can summon demons on Inuyasha too. Without the he can also he can use the range skills of Tokujin. So I give that off to Sesshomaru, because he didn't have all that extra shit that he had. Like the Tenseiga was not at its full power in the middle of the series. Yeah, he was still having problems with it. Recoup, I give it to Sesshomaru. Yeah, I just give it to Sesshomaru on that. He has bounced back. Inuyasha has bounced back to Sesshomaru for the hacks as well, because he's still running around fucking demons up. Inuyasha's still struggling with demons, but he's out here, defeating them and other things, hunting down Naraku, and actually, getting to see Kikyo and Naraku before, Inuyasha does. And in some cases, environment goes to Sesshomaru for that reason again. So in the first scenario, it's 10-1 Sesshomaru. I'll say, mid to high diff. Now in the second scenario, this is the closest it gets, and it's still like heavy Sesshomaru, right? So they fought a little bit when Maasogi took over Inuyasha's body, but it wasn't Inuyasha, right? Because it was Maasogi in his body and shit controlling him. Now, after they fight against Naraku and everything, and Inuyasha still has his abilities, right? Strength goes to Sesshomaru. Speed, Sesshomaru. They both have people they like to protect. Durability, Sesshomaru. Endurance is also Sesshomaru. Intelligence is Sesshomaru. And experience is Sesshomaru. Now, close skills go to Inuyasha. Inuyasha, I do believe, is a better scrapper than Sesshomaru is. Just so slightly, he is. Especially if he gets mad and enraged. Now, this is where the range skills come in. Sesshomaru has, Box Saga, right? And he has the ability to use the NATO, but he has to, have the help of Inuyasha to use it, I believe, right? But he has not just that. He doesn't just have that. He has the Scarlet. He has all those forms of, Tenseiga. He can use the Backlash Wave, the Wind Scar. He can use Adamant Barrage. All of those moves are now in his toolkit. And he can keep Sesshomaru off his dick a little bit. Now, Recoup, I'll give that to Sesshomaru. Actually, I'll give it to Inuyasha, because he was bouncing back from Maasugi taking over his body, and all this shit with fucking Kikyo, and that takes a toll on a man, but it didn't take a toll on Inuyasha. It made him better. He didn't let that get him down, and his health bars went back up. He just fought harder. Just Recoup. He took damage when he fucking got his body taken over. Y'all, you don't know that? Hacks go to Inuyasha. Like I said, he has way more moves than the Tenseiga. Now, I know that Sesshomaru has an extra sword now, right? But it's still not like the Tenseiga. The Tenseiga has more offensive powers. It has more abilities. It has the ability to take an attribute of a demon and then, use that ability in the blade. But the environment still goes to Sesshomaru. So this one is closer, high diff for sure. This one's high diff. But I still think Sesshomaru can pull off a win, because he has 2 swords actually, And then in the new iteration, the third scenario, Inuyasha kind of Man, he took a fucking break for a little bit, man. He went inside of the Black Pearl. And he was sealed away in the Black Pearl. Now, in the Black Pearl, right, you have, it's another world. And he's there with Kagome, right? And they're just there, and I don't remember why they were there and shit, but they're there together, right? You think that they were training that whole time? They weren't. They definitely weren't. So knowing this, and Inuyasha has the skills still and all that, right? But Sesshomaru was there, out there with Maru, an animal who fought against his father and shit, and knowing that, and understanding that he's the most powerful demon, the strongest demon in the world still. Even at that point in the series, he was still that guy and shit, and he had to heed calls to defending his land and shit. You know, so Sesshomaru, his strength is over Inuyasha's. His speed is over Inuyasha. Durability is over Inuyasha. Endurance is over Inuyasha. Intelligence over Inuyasha. Experience over Inuyasha. Now, close skills, I'll still give it to Inuyasha. Like, I just see him as the better scrapper. We saw Inuyasha and everything he's done, right? Sesshomaru uses swords and he uses those, whips. And he can attack with his hands too. But I just give it to Inuyasha, And range skills, I can even give that to Inuyasha. But they were probably lacking, abilities and everything else because he hasn't been fighting too much and not like any real enemies like Sesshomaru fought. Now, like I like to say, after I get this out of the way, recoup, I got Sesshomaru for that. And this is the thing, right? In Yashahime, he took attack from Maru, who was like on par with, Sesshomaru's father. And like didn't tank the attack, because he was like fucked up for a little bit. He had to sit the fuck down for a while, before he got off his fucking feet again. Like he got hurt. His daughters are like, damn, our father, went down. It was a powerful attack, but Inuyasha, tanking that shit. Nah, brother, he's not doing shit like that. He's in the same position as Sesshomaru, and it's gonna take Inuyasha even longer to get him. Hacks go to Sesshomaru, and endurance goes to, environment goes to Sesshomaru. So overall, this one is gonna be mid-diff Sesshomaru, because Inuyasha's rusty, but Sesshomaru kept on doing this shit. Like he knew he had daughters and everything else. He was just like, they're gonna, fend for themselves and be demons and shit. They're out there. Their mother, was Rin, and I have to do what I can to protect them. I can't be there. Like this is still the world that I have to defend and shit. I have to be that, the strongest demon, as my name, suggests, right? So when it comes down to Inuyasha versus Sesshomaru, and this is towards like older anime heads who might not agree with me, and like people who subscribe and know of Inuyasha, like OG and shit, right? Sesshomaru wins all those battles and shit. He had the best chance against, Inuyasha at the end of Inuyasha. Inuyasha had the best chance against Sesshomaru. But it was never a question of who was more powerful and stronger. Like, even all the demons in the land knew it was Sesshomaru and shit. They knew that. They never even thought of Inuyasha. He was even a thought. Now, Inuyasha ended up proving people wrong, but it was still like, even after all that shit, So, know that Sesshomaru is actually the more powerful demon. But be cool, call in the corner.